Hello, it's me again. So, State of VueJS Report 2025. We have heard yesterday about the state of Vue by Evan. We heard about the state of Next today. And now we are happy to share with you that the work on the 2025 report of State of Vue is done. But before I can share with you the good news and the report itself, I would like to tell you a bit about Montreal, about the company itself that produced this report. So let's start with some numbers. So Montreal, we at Montreal have 10 years of experience in VueJS. We have more than 40 successful VueJS projects, and we are also an official VueJS and Next featured partner. And what I realized recently is also that as Montreal, we did the first VueJS conference in Europe in 2017. It wasn't the size of VueJS Amsterdam, but it was the first one, so we are very, very proud of it. And as we are the company that is using Vue, we also like to give back to the community that we are using the things from. So what we also like to share with you today, apart from the report, is that we did another project. And this project was led by Szymon Licau, who is here as well with us from Montreal. And this project is the Polish translation of VueJS documentation, so that people from Poland have more accessible or have more accessible documentation about VueJS, so that it will be easier for them to learn this amazing framework. So about the state of VueJS report. Another numbers. It's the 5th edition of the report. It includes case studies, 16 Vue and Next case studies. We have more than 30 expert contributions and more than 1,400 responders in the survey. We talked with companies such as GitLab, Hack-the-Box, Storyblok, Booksy, Give Directly, Allokai, and Doc Planner to understand better what are the current struggles and challenges for Vue and Next developers. So this report basically was made possible by you and all Vue community around the world. So we have, as I mentioned, the case studies, the migration guides, the overall design of the report and the work that needs to be coordinated. So from this place, I would like to get a round of applause for all of us who contributed here, all of us here, and especially to Asia, who is here as well from our company, who was coordinating all the stuff throughout the last 1.5 years. So that was made possible by her. Top highlights from the State of VueJS Report 2025. 96%, we'll start with the survey, 96% of the developers are working with Vue 3.x, Vue 3 in general. 93% will use Vue in their next project, which is also a good information. 82% pick TypeScript over JavaScript, which I'm pretty happy about. And 80% choose Pinia for global state management. And also, almost 70% used Next in their projects in the last 12 months. We also discovered a few challenges throughout the survey that are with us, Vue and Next developers, until today. And start with Vue will be the migration difficulties from Vue 2 to Vue 3. And it was about 25% of answers. Then we have 17%, which was tooling and ecosystem limitations. And 13% was about job opportunities, like comparing job offers of React to Vue. In terms of Next, the 26% was related to documentation issues. 21% was about efficient data fetching. And 16% was about ecosystem and stability, something that Daniel was talking about during his talk, that it's all about the ecosystem, right? So these are the key insights, the key information that we got from the report. But what else you can expect from the report itself? You can expect State of View Union by Evan Hu, which is a detailed interview with Evan we did about the state of Vue. VueJS by the numbers. So analytics, who is using Vue, how many projects there are built with Vue and Next, and so on and so on. Next core team insights about what Next team is currently working on, what modules they are working on, what improvements to the core framework, what are the projects built with Next. Everything about Vue-free migration, so we have a few examples of how they can help you migrate your Vue app from version 2 to 3, and much, much more. So the VueJS report is available on this website, so you can scan this QR code. There will be full report there that is more than 150 pages of data related to Vue. But that's not all, because we, with the work of with the organizers of VueJS Amsterdam, we also prepared physical copies of State of Vue report that will be available for you to grab after the discussion panel. So I can encourage you to stay for the discussion, because we have guests to ask them some questions, but also for the physical copy of the State of VueJS report. So now I would like to invite to the stage our panelist guests, who are Evan Hu, Alex Lichter, Luella Kriemers, Daniel Kelly, and Daniel Rowe. Give them a round of applause. Here?
Yeah, wherever you want, right?
Okay. Oh, in terms of technical things, in the top right corner, you have the QR code for the app where you can ask some questions, and we'll go through some of the questions from the report and through the questions that you asked the panelists. And side note, it was working pretty well until yesterday, but yesterday it broke. Like, there was an issue with the certificate, so we needed to adjust it quickly with Alex, but it works. And the app is built with Next.
It's also not my app, by the way. It's Slido, so it's also featured in the report, actually.
Wait, Slido is built with Next?
No, not Slido. It's Blido. It's a better Slido.
Ah, okay.
It's free as well.
Very nice.
Okay, so let's maybe start with introducing yourself, but not in a traditional way, because you have already given some talks. So let's start with telling us one interesting fact about yourself.
Start over there.
Oh dear, something interesting, you
Can be
say?
something funny, something interesting.
So I was a child actor in a TV show called Little Frog Learns English, where I learned English. The aim was it was a Chinese TV show, and I hope that someone at some point watched it. I would love at some point to meet someone who says, "Oh yes, yes, I was a kid and we watched Little Frog Learns English." That would be my dream one day.
Do you have recordings of that still somewhere?
That's what
I do. I have a recording and a book. There was accompanying merchandise. I was in the book as well, and the illustrator, he told me, "I liked you most of all the children." So he said, "I gave you a big nose." And indeed, my character in the book has the most enormous nose. It's really wonderful.
Can you share a pic of that later when you're home, maybe?
Later, maybe, yeah.
Please.
Is the recording available?
It's what my next avatar. It can be that.
Okay, okay.
I was a child actor in my 3rd grade school play.
Nice one.
No, overall, I'm fairly uninteresting, if I'm going to be honest, but my children are both about to be black belts in karate, which is, the funnest thing going on in life right now. Yeah.
Nice.
I love Rubik's Cubes, so I have a whole pile of them in my office, and I also always have one in my bag. And if I go to work at the university, I also always have one on hand, just when I'm bored, that I can scramble with it. Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, I tried to, I never knew how to solve a Rubik's Cube until my son was like, Dad, can you teach me how to solve it? I'm like, I don't know how to solve it, so I had to look it up online. And I finally solved it for the first time, and I was intending to teach him, but every time later he just scrambles and it comes to like, Dad, please solve it. I'm like, you were supposed to learn it yourself, but he just, now I am the designated Rubik's Cube solver in my family.
That was like a cool job title, actually. I don't have any Rubik's Cube story or like child actor story, I'm afraid. But when I was like younger, like a teenager, I did some German rap. There are no recordings online anymore. Don't even try to look it up. Yeah.
Was hoping for it.
No, I'm afraid no. Maybe after party at some time, but no.
Is there a recording of you doing Barbara's Rhubarb Bar? Because that would be amazing.
This is a really good one. There is no recording because that was way beyond the time, but I would lie if I wouldn't have tried to sing along. It's a really good one. How about you, Jakub, actually?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm a technical diver, which means that there are certain levels of diving where you have like the recreational one and the technical one. Recreational one is when you take one bottle and you just dive for fun. And the technical one is where you take more than one bottle and you stay for longer and you try to do more advanced dives.
Crazy.
Was it good? Or?
It was, yeah. Any other technical divers in the audience? Like, there, over there, okay. You can connect after the panel.
Okay, good.
Very cool.
So maybe right now, starting from this side, what are you most proud of?
I mean, it's difficult because there are a lot of great achievements in life. I would say what I'm... oh God, this sounds so wrong. But in general, I think, but recently especially, I'm proud that I could join Void Zero. I think that's the thing. I was proud of most recently.
Well, for me, the proudest moment is always when I come to conferences like this and seeing, so many people coming in person just for, connecting, for a community that's created around the things that I made, and that just makes me very, very proud. Yeah. Thank you.
For me, it's definitely teaching university classes, like getting students in that don't know how to code at all, have never touched code at all, just have been gaming all the time and thought, hey, I'm going to do software development now, up to graduating a couple of years later and then actually getting a job as a developer and seeing them at conferences and just be happy in life because of what they learned at my lectures. So that's it.
I mean, I have to put first things first. And in terms of family and my children, I'm very proud of who they are and what they're becoming. I know that's not what you're here to hear about, though. So, second of all, I really am proud to be a part of the Vue community and I'm proud to be able to give back what was given to me when I first picked up Vue from a world of jQuery and things like that. I mean, it truly made a path in my career to build cool things, to provide for my family, and now I get to help others learn VueJS and hopefully do the same thing in their career. So I'm proud of that.
I'm probably most proud of having successfully infiltrated a group of very intelligent people as an imposter. I don't think they've noticed yet, but I might have just given the game away.
Daniel, come on. Don't do this to us.
Nice, nice. And what are you currently working on?
Nobody clapped yet.
What are you currently working on, like hacking or building?
We start from there again.
Yeah.
Oh, I am building a, okay,
Too many things.
can I tell you, can I tell you this? So it's deployed, it's not public. So you can't, so it's not great. But if you go to unsite.dev, like Insight, but unsite, I'm building an app that indexes GitHub issues and detects similarity and duplication between them, so you can install it as a GitHub app on your repo and then detect. They might be duplicates. They might also just be clusters of similar issues. I found it so useful in Nuxt. Built it back in, I think, November, December. And I need to do the final bits of polish and actually launch it. It's so difficult to do that last push, but I think it'll be really useful. So that's something I'm working on. It's open source, actually. So when I say it's not public, it's only pseudo not public. You can find it and contribute and fix it and launch it for me if you want to.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Development-wise, right now, probably the most entertaining thing I've done recently is just for my talk that I gave yesterday, a exam scanning app that helps create quizzes from like physical textbooks, and that was a lot of fun to do. And a lot of my time is all spent creating content, which I think is also kind of a work of love, just like dev is. I don't get to do the dev as much as I used to, but yeah.
I have the exact same thing. I'm working a lot on YouTube videos and blog posts and new speaker sessions, alongside also teaching and being a developer. So that takes up all of my time. So currently I'm not working on any projects, open source stuff. That's just don't have time for it.
Well, on the Vue side, obviously mostly been working on vapor mode. So we're trying to push the hydration feature to completion. And and outside of just writing code, actually I spend a relatively smaller amount of time writing code compared to, say, 10 years ago. Now we have a company to run, and on the company side, obviously the VueJS projects, there are a lot of, I don't get to write a lot of Rust code, but I, am deeply involved in the technical decisions of, like, do we want to do this feature? How do we prioritize things? Making sure everything fits together. On the Vue side, also trying to, coordinate work between the different sub-projects inside the ecosystem. So, yeah, it's a lot of work outside of just writing code as well, but I still try to find time to work on interesting problems. Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's like for Daniel, also for a lot of content. I mean, YouTube videos once every week, Deja Vu podcast also once a week, and besides that, I think like if we talk about like an application or website, I built on stream. So if I really not at conferences, I'm traveling, I have time. A site called LiveView. It's live on liveview.dev. It's very simple. It just shows the people streaming right now and have the Vue or Nuxt tag like in the title, so you can see, oh, I want to maybe see someone else building some cool things in Vue or Nuxt, like when, for example, Daniel's streaming, or a lot of people that you might not know yet. So check out the site and find your new favorite streamer and learn something.
Sounds good.
How about you? Can't skip you.
For me, recently it was the Nuxt Commerce, the template that I showed. But the other thing that I'm recently working on is the migrating the content security policy feature to Nuxt, so that it will be the default, not the default, like the built-in functionality that everyone can contribute from or take from. Because right now you can use Nuxt security, which is a separate module, so you have to install it, and there are many features there, not just the content security policy. And we talked about internally with Daniel and Puya that it will be useful to have this feature as a part of the core framework. So I would say that.
There's also an RFC you can check out if you're interested in that and give some feedback if you use content security policy, so do that.
Self-plug.
It's your RFC, right? So.
Okay, so let's maybe move to some like quick fire questions. A or B, so JavaScript or TypeScript?
TypeScript.
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 TypeScript, unless I'm teaching JavaScript.
Okay.
TypeScript.
Fast. Vite or Vue CLI?
What a question. If I would say Vue CLI, yeah, Vue CLI for very legacy projects, if I have to know Vite, obviously.
I mean, unless you love Webpack, Vite is obviously the answer. Yeah.
Feet.
Vite. Next. Sorry, Vite? Yes, Vite.
Tailwind CSS or
Yes.
okay, or SCSS, SAS, or anything else?
Well, I don't actually use a lot of Tailwind, but if I'm starting a new project, I'd probably go Tailwind, yes.
I have a very bad habit of just using Bootstrap when I need a quick demo or website. But otherwise, Tailwind, yeah.
Tailwind a lot of times with Daisy UI.
I tend to reach for Uno CSS.
Also a good choice, yeah.
Interesting option.
A product of amazing Anthony Fu. Check it out. You can probably use all your Tailwind code in Uno. It's a superset.
Options API versus composition API.
I stand by what I said with the Vue CLI question. Legacy code, yeah, options API, sure, because it's there. And I don't know, if I don't have to touch it, like if there are, let's say, 1,000 components, and I don't have to touch 900 of them, it's great. Otherwise, composition API for new stuff.
Nah, composition API, but please use script setup.
Oh, yeah.
Composition as well.
Composition.
Composition.
Is anyone not using script setup, but the composition API, like with the setup function? Anyone here? No? Great.
Great.
We're all relieved.
People actually doing that probably are too ashamed to raise their hands.
Could be. A global management system such as Pina, like for state management, or composables.
Use state most of the time if I work with Nuxt. Otherwise, yeah, Pina if it's necessary.
I don't think it's a this or that kind of question, but it really depends on what I'm building. Yeah, like because for a lot of the smaller stuff, we're just one off. Like it feels an overkill to have a global store. So I'll just use a composable. Yeah, but if you're building something larger, probably you need a store. Yeah.
I would say composable, personally.
Likewise, a composable with a ref and a view project or a use state in Next. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say composable. But it's a scale thing. So I reach first for the composable, and then when it no longer does the job, then I move to the store.
Okay. SPA or SSR?
It depends. Yeah, whenever you need SSR, it's amazing, right? It's a great option, but I'm also happy to build an SPA if it's like behind authentication, don't need SEO, I'll do that because there are enough people overusing SSR, not that much in the Vue ecosystem though, but yeah, let's not make it a bad habit.
Yeah, like I think there are really like different ways of leveraging this. For example, like if you're building a VPress site, right? It actually leverages SSR. But it does at a build time, right? So you get the benefits of SEO without having to run a Node.js server, but you still get the SPA experience after it loads. And I think like if your data is static and known ahead of time, that's a really good choice, right? You know, and when you're using Nuxt, you can actually like opt into like client-side only mode or SSR mode. So really you need to like pick the right mode for the type of app you're building. Yeah.
For me, SPA with a .NET backend, personally.
Depends on the route, because I'm using Next. Yeah.
I lean to SSR.
Okay. And final one, VS Code or JetBrains or Cursor?
So VS Code with GitHub Copilot and the agentic mode there in the Insiders Edition.
I actually use VS Code I turned Copilot off, and I tried Cursor and just didn't feel it did enough for me, mostly because of the type of the code that I write. AI usually gives me really useless answers. So yeah.
No vibe coding?
No vibe coding.
JetBrains all the way. I'm a JetBrains community contributor, so you already know. I use it for C#, I use it for Python, I use it for JavaScript, I use JetBrains for everything. So.
Started with PHP Storm some time ago, went to VS Code, and now I'm dabbling in Cursor. and loving it. So.
I need a really good reason to switch. I use VS Code. I haven't found Cursor compelling. JetBrains is really nice, but I've got a working setup, so.
Okay, good. Can we get a round of applause for these quick fire questions? And now for the State of Vue report questions. Because we've seen that there is still an issue with the migration from Vue 2 to Vue 3. So what would be your recommendation for someone who is trying to migrate the app from version 2 to version 3?
How much time do we have? Yeah, 30 minutes. Okay. No, but realistically, I'll give a few things here. First rule, do you have to? Like, do you actually still maintain the project? Do you need to add new features? It's also fine to like not touch it if you don't need to at all. So that's the first thing. Otherwise, do your research, especially upgrading Vue 2 to Vue 3, like the core is not the problem, quote unquote. It's more like whatever comes with that. Like, okay, Webpack to Vite, right? The ecosystem especially, check which packages are available, if they're replacement packages, new major versions, if they're no replacement. Maybe create an own one if you have like an interesting use case. But especially nowadays, compared to when Vue 3 came out like relatively newly, the ecosystem caught up quite well. So it's more like, make a little table, see what you can match how, and then also see which components you don't have to touch at all. It's great, leave them out. Don't start options API to composition API straight away. Do that later, or if you have to. For example, if a package only provides like composables. Yeah, these were like rough rule sets that I usually follow.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits of upgrading now compared to, say, 3 years ago is how the Vue 3 ecosystem has matured immensely. We have tons of great UI component solutions, including the newly released Nux UI 3. And there's also, a lot of community members. For example, there is now an implementation based on the what is originally Framework Motion. It's now a standalone Motion project. Its core is framework agnostic, so someone has been porting like Framework Motion essentially to Vue, and that's been working tremendously well. So a lot of the things people used to say, oh, like we have this in React, but it doesn't exist in Vue, like slowly it has been, we're filling the gap for the Vue 3 ecosystem. So I think that's probably the most convincing argument. If you have a project that you want to maintain for the long run and you want to keep adding new things to it, right? By upgrading, you get access to a more mature and wider ecosystem compared to Vue 2 is probably stagnated at this point. But like Alex said, you definitely need to weigh the cost against the benefit. Like, do you intend to actually maintain this for the long run, or is it something? If that's just working and requires very little maintenance, then honestly, you probably should just leave it at Vue 2, and that's totally fine. Yeah. So, but if you do want to upgrade, obviously start with the compat build. And from our experience, the biggest blocker usually is usage of like third-party dependencies that have hard coupling with Vue 2 internals. If you don't have anything like that, then it should be relatively straightforward with the compat build, because we really tried really hard to make it as close to Vue 2 behavior as possible. But if you have a hard dependency, you probably want to look for a good replacement first. Or in the worst case scenario, you might want to consider just rewrite. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Go Imposter Syndrome. I am currently working on migrating a client app from V2 to V3. So I'm very much listening to them because I'm learning on the spot here. So I don't have a good answer for you. I'm just learning on the go.
Mm-hmm. We'll hear more next year, right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean it takes a year, it just means here again.
I will be
didn't want to imply that.
give you my answers.
I would say don't take on too much. And what I mean by that is a lot of people look at Vue 2 and Vue 3 and they compare not just the core library, but they compare all the new best practices to what there was before. And they say, my Vue 3 migration also has to include Vuex to Pina. It also has to include Vue CLI to Vite. It also has to include composition or Options API to Composition API. And that's not true. You don't have to do all that at one time. Some of those you don't have to do at all. Like you don't have to take all your Options API components and change them to Composition API. There's no reason to do that unless you're going to continue to develop that component in some way. And so, you know, take it slowly. The process that I found easiest was the Vue CLI to Vite process. So long as you don't have a lot of custom like Webpack things going on, that's a really like you could do it in like an hour. It's not a difficult thing for many projects. So take it, you know, take it small steps at a time and just don't try to do everything at once. We also have a workshop that Vue School offers that actually takes you through this compat build and kind of walks you through step by step an example project on. Now, you know, it's an educative thing. It's a simple project. It's not your real world huge project because it doesn't deal with, you know, changing Vuetify to a new version of Vuetify and these different ecosystem things. But we do have some resources comparing, hey, what's different in Vue 3 from Vue 2, and how do you use that compat build in order to make the transition?
I totally agree with breaking big tasks up into smaller pieces. Things like this, because they're so all-encompassing, it's one ecosystem to another ecosystem, it's often difficult to do that. But best practices, splitting that out into separate PRs makes a big difference. It's also possible to break your app up sort of vertically. So if you, for example, have a set of routes that you can migrate to a new app or to a v3 version of your app, and then apply a hard barrier in the router that detects a navigation across the barrier and forces a hard reload, you can actually deploy Vue 2 and Vue 3 apps at the same time. Obviously, that's for particularly large projects. I was chatting to someone earlier who was looking at maybe a 6-month thing, like a migration, and stopping feature work. To avoid that kind of thing, if you can deploy little bits and then gradually and progressively move them over, it means you can continue working on the new version without pausing that and progressively still be migrating, rather than have one enormous PR that keeps on growing over 6 months and totally blocks development, or is a total nightmare to rebase or merge down the line. So maybe just another way of breaking things down into smaller pieces that's worth being aware of.
That reminds me also of one more thing. Tests. Anyone? No, but like honestly, especially for the components that you want to change or have to change, so to say, write tests beforehand, check that they work afterwards. It will be easier, plus you have then tests in your code base. Yay.
Hopefully some of those tests are already there, right?
Yeah, expectations. Expectations. I wish.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. How should we convince our stubborn React friend to finally switch over to Vue?
I think Daniel has a good start on that, actually.
I think so, as well.
Oh, what are you saying, Alex? Alex is trying to pressure me into finishing the course that I set out to create called React to Nuxt. And the idea is exactly that. I mean, the starting point is that actually you don't have to pressure anybody to switch UI libraries. It's totally fine to use whatever you want. Obviously, there is one true UI library, and that is Vue, but it's important to be tolerant of other beliefs. I think a good argument is to talk about the primitives of the web, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. The way that Vue exposes that in a single file component is, I think, very attractive. I think some of the things that Evan was talking about yesterday in terms of the speed of Vue will be phenomenal things to drop into conversation, followed by a sharp dig in the ribs. Just keep the pressure going. That's
yeah. I think so. I think there are. It's interesting. Like Daniel says, you don't necessarily want to forcefully convert people to use Vue, right? But I think, like in reality, there are a lot of React developers who went with React without really thinking through what they actually like. I think there are a decent chunk of React developers who just, because, oh, this is how you got to get a job, this is like what my friend is using, so they just got into it. They don't necessarily love React. If someone actually loves React, then I don't think there's a point in trying to sort of convince them otherwise. But if someone's like, say, I struggle with hooks, right? Or I struggle with understanding the rule of hooks, I struggle with use effect, that's a good candidate to convert. Right? So you want to find people like that.
So almost everyone, you want to say.
Okay, anyone else? Jump on this.
I'm not sure I would be able to convert someone from React to Vue, but for someone who is just getting into web development and is saying, which one should I choose? I often just like to speak from personal experience. In a job I was at previously, we had this need to adopt a reactive framework, and we didn't even really know what we needed. Like, right? We didn't even understand what a reactive framework was, but we knew the troubles we were having, right? And so I was on the plane to a Laracon conference in, I believe it was in Kentucky. I saw Evan there for the first time and learned about Vue. But it was this crazy coincidence, actually. On the plane ride, or at the airport before going to the conference, somebody was telling us about React. And we were like, what is this? I don't understand. And he was trying to explain it and things. And then I saw Evan's talk at Laracon. And it made a lot of sense, like, oh, that's really cool. So we went back and we kind of compared the two and played with the two. And honestly, React just the way it felt wasn't right. And so we ended up choosing Vue for that and ended up, really loving the development process.
Yeah, I think especially the start of someone getting into web development, and it's already been mentioned, it's like that focus on, okay, if you want to land a job, then choose React. It's not fully true. It's hard in general at the moment, of course, with jobs. But yeah, just try things out, like try different frameworks and check what clicks with you the most. Like if you like, I don't know, Svelte more than a React, or Vue or Angular, if you're up to that, or like Solid, go for that. If the mental model works for you, why not? And for someone who is already experienced with React, I also agree with like find what they're annoyed. That can be like framework specific things like reactivity, maybe saying, oh, JSX is not that nice. I know people usually say like, why can't we use JSX in Vue? And then like, yeah, you can, it's possible. Especially React developers. But yeah, finding also maybe weaknesses around the tooling. That's also something. Like, for example, the Vue dev tools are excellent, so are the Nux dev tools. And then see like, okay, it's not only about what the framework has to offer, but also the ecosystem. Very often it's like, oh yeah, React has so many libraries. Vue, for example, has such a rich and mature ecosystem. I've mentioned that before as well. With all the UI libraries, with everything around that, also a lot of things coming from the Vue ecosystem at the end, or being there with like Vue as first-class citizen, like Fusion PHP that Aaron Francis, for example, created, where you can write PHP in your Vue components. Won't get into details here, but it's very interesting, especially for all Laravel developers. Vue was there as like first-class citizen. Like, it works with Vue. There's how you fuse things together. And yeah, just show them, hey, we have cool things, try it out, and then if you like it, why don't you try a bit more?
I converted from React to Vue, and I'm very happy. So that also shows something.
Yeah. So yeah, I think adding to the point, some React developers, maybe they've just never looked out of their bubble in a way. So they may have assumptions on like, oh, like React is the only framework with a large enough ecosystem. Whereas I think for either Vue or Angular, the ecosystem is definitely large enough to cross the threshold of being, sufficient, right? And on the other hand, maybe they just never tried a different way of thinking about things. I think fundamentally React is actually now the only framework that's very, very deep down in its own paradigm, right? Almost every other framework is now like reactivity based. Like by reactivity, I mean true reactivity. That's like we have refs, signals, things that can track these changes, instead of whereas React is kind of like this repeated rendering model. But this is obviously something that's quite deep in technically, but it kind of leaks into your daily development experience. Like I said, like when you are dealing with use effect, people will be asking, why do I have to pass this like dependency array thing? And why do I need React compiler to fix that for me, right? You can tell them, well, if you switch to another framework, you don't need something like React compiler to help you with this kind of problems.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one more thing as well, because we can build amazing things with a lot of frameworks out there. So very often we also look one level higher, and especially in the React universe, like, okay, you use always a meta framework. At least that's what the docs kind of recommended until we don't get into that drama. But it's usually, okay, let's reach out for Next, so Next.js, or like 10-stack start when it's out, and so on and so on. Angular doesn't have a meta framework. It has analog, but like not that people like push on. Same, like you can use plain Vue, but taking a look at what the meta frameworks have as well, comparing them, seeing, okay, what can, for example, Next offer with like layers for like more enterprise applications, or also the application that you feature slice. There can be a lot of benefits that other meta frameworks maybe don't have that. So that's also a valid thing of choosing what your requirements are in the end. Yeah, eventually you also don't have to switch at all. You can build amazing things with all of them.
Yeah, and I think I saw someone who actually used Next, SvelteKit, and Nuxt, and the conclusion was Nuxt is actually the only framework that treats, you know, the SSR, SSG, and SPA as true like first-class concepts, and the only framework that actually have all these modes work correctly at RHEL level. Like that's a pretty important feature in my opinion.
Agree.
Agreed.
We talked about finding a job with Vue, and in the survey, developers mentioned that it's more difficult to get a job in Vue nowadays in comparison to React. So what would be your recommendation for them, how to find a job in Vue?
Well, coming to this conference is a good choice.
True.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I think it starts, as I mentioned before, it's generally hard in web development, but the trickiest part, especially nowadays with AI, is like, okay, there is an open application, and there are like thousands of submissions, and a lot of them AI generated. So, and I think that applies to applying in general, like stand out, either connect with people at meetups, at conferences, online, GitHub. If you have a network, it's the easiest way of finding a job, because usually they know you for like, okay, hey, you maybe help with that, or you're like interested in certain things. Otherwise, go to meetups, because developers going to meetups, usually the ones that are actually like passionate about certain topics, frameworks, languages, whatsoever. So like the human part is so important, and once again, it doesn't only apply to Vue, it's a general thing. So yeah, network a bit more.
Yeah, I think so too. Networking is very important. It can make or break your career, literally. Go to conferences, go to meetups, maybe do some open source stuff, get on X, get on Blue Sky, show what you're building, connect with other Vue developers or companies that build with Vue, and that way you can get a job way easier and faster than if you just going to sit at your job from 9 to 5 and not have any contact with anyone besides that.
Yeah. And speaking of open source, I know it's not the way that every company hires people, but like say at VueZero, everyone we hired pretty much is either someone we knew beforehand through open source or someone who have contributed our projects. And so the nice thing about that is when we talk to them, instead of looking at the resume and trying to like do technical interviews and figuring out their actual skills, we just look at the code they've already given us, right? And we already know how they collaborate with people, already know how they are capable of dealing with technical issues and their code style. Can they follow conventions and being able to just jump into a code base on their own? It gives so much information, so we can just like skip all these tedious like technical interviews and just jump straight to like, the culture fit is already there because we're an open source first company. I guess like for more generic job applications, still having public open source work is a sign of confidence that you're willing to put your code out there and you're willing to, being able to jump into other people's code bases and make meaningful changes, make meaningful contributions. And I think that demonstrates a lot. So like for me, like a pull request to one of my projects is more convincing than a resume.
Yeah.
That's like how I see it.
I would also add that it's not about volume. So I had a question from someone who said, I've applied to literally over 1,000 jobs and I haven't gotten any of them. And you know, I've got a degree and I'm looking for my first job. What's wrong? And I genuinely think don't apply to 1,000 jobs because it's much better to pick fewer and really write a letter, think about your CV, make one page is a good length for a CV. It doesn't have to be long, but just think about it, every sentence from the perspective of that job. How are they going to take it? You can apply places that don't have jobs. You can write, if you find a company you would love to work for, you can always reach out to them directly. That's really nice. It's about standing out. And there are lots of ways to stand out and not just be one more resume at the bottom of the pile. Services that will fire your resume off to thousands of companies will make your resume just one more in the pile. That is a way to be ignored. Yeah. But there are lots of ways not to be ignored. And like open source is one. And networking too, I would agree. But always approach it from the perspective not of how can I get a job, but how can I help other people? And they might be approaching it from the same point of view as well.
And don't be afraid to apply up. If there's something in their requirement set that is a little above your pay grade, let's say, don't be afraid to, you know, you can still offer value, and I've applied up on many occasions and got the job and learned something new when I started. Didn't mean I wasn't fit for the job altogether, you know, but yeah, don't be afraid to apply up.
I also don't think that employers say, oh, just because you don't fulfill one criteria on the list, then you're out. It's more about, like, I don't know, it's even about frameworks as well. If you say you're desperately looking for a job, or just like, hey, I want a job, I need to pay bills, we all need to, right? Unfortunate. Then, yeah, you can also, if you, like, let's say you're good in Vue, you will pick up like a React or a Svelte or an Angular or a Solid, like any other framework, quite quickly if you understand the concepts of Vue. So don't be afraid also to say, okay, I would prefer Vue, but maybe I have to do React for a little bit, or Angular, and so on and so on. The other part as well is, well, we don't have to pigeonhole us all as these developers, right? You're JavaScript developers or TypeScript developers, and showing that, hey, okay, I'm eager to learn that, it's fine, I'm interested in the company or like what they do, and I'm a good engineer is super key there.
That's true, yeah. I think like when you're job hunting, defining yourself as a specific framework developer is actually, I guess like strategically it's not the best choice. Like you want to present yourself as someone who's capable of just learning new skills. I think that's actually more a positive signal for potential employers.
Which I think also doesn't mean like you have to write like, hey, I did these 100 technologies and I do like all these frameworks. No, just like, okay, I have experience with this framework, but I'm open to anything else. Yep. Fun story though, I'm every now and then in the VueJS Reddit. It's not a toxic story, don't worry. And I saw two posts like right after each other. The first one was like about someone like, hey, I'm looking for a job, like I think a tweet or so, like a screenshot of a tweet was like, yeah. And so on. Under that was like someone who looks for Vue developers, like, where are all the good Vue developers? So there's also a mismatch there in a way. But there are jobs out there. There are portals like VueJobs, for example. You can have a look. Yeah. There are remote opportunities. But also there's a lot of it depends. I think we got a lot of good suggestions on how you can find the next one. Maybe also connected with some people here. It's like, hey, we're looking for some people.
Yeah, and speaking from the employer's perspective, I think most of the time, like, because Vue is really like relatively easy to learn among all the frameworks, right? So I think the foremost thing most employers are looking for is a good developer in the first place. So you want to prove that first instead of showing you're a good Vue developer. Like, obviously, if you're a really good Vue developer, that's a bonus, right? But you've got to be a good developer first. Yeah.
I agree. We have an interesting question from the audience. Any thoughts on the recent news of TS being rewritten in Go? And will this affect Vue or Void Zero?
That's a really relevant question. I actually knew this last year. The TS team reached out to us, and we kind of got the first dip on this, and I thought, you know, it's kind of expected, because my point of view, people have started asking us, like, are you going to rewrite TS in Rust, like, since we founded the company? Our answer is always no, because the only team that is capable of doing that would be the Microsoft, the TypeScript team themselves, because TS is such a, it's a moving target. They're constantly churning out new features, and their release cadence is really like very intense. So anyone trying to replicate TS in another language, they will be forever playing catch up. You'll never be the official implementation. So the only team that is capable of doing that will be the TS team themselves. And in terms of language choice, we've seen people trying to do type checking for TS. And when we talked to the TS team, the reasoning is pretty much the same, because what they want to do is a one-to-one port. Keeping the two versions in parallel, in sync, is extremely important. Otherwise, there's little value in actually doing it. And Rust is not a good candidate for that, because the way you have to memory management in Rust is very different from how you do it in a garbage-collected language. Whereas Go fits that mental model much closer to TypeScript. It's the code base itself. So for me, that's a really, really pragmatic choice for them. And I kind of agree. If I were to do it, I probably would go with, choose Go too. But the biggest shortcoming of Go is its WebAssembly performance. The Go WebAssembly story has never been good. So let's say you compile TypeScript Go into WebAssembly, people have tested that. It's actually 5 times slower than the JavaScript version of it when it's run in the browser. So that's a pretty important problem. So, which is why at VueJS we chose Rust, because Rust has a much more mature and better WebAssembly story. So when Rowdown is compiled to WebAssembly running in the browser, it's actually, like 40, 50 times faster than ESBuild, which is written in Go. So that's the WebAssembly performance difference. So I hope that incentivizes Microsoft to actually invest into making Go's WebAssembly performance better. So, so we don't get to, because there are very many use cases where we actually need to run TypeScript in the browser. For example, our Vue's SFC playground. We actually run TypeScript, run Volar on top of TypeScript directly in your browser to get type checking, right? So if we can't get better speed up with the Go version, we'll have to be stuck with the old JavaScript version of TypeScript. And that would be sad. So I hope they do find a way to fix that, yeah.
Yeah, I think besides that, like, we all get a nice speed up, like up to 10x faster is cool, so we should give that a go.
Yeah, so on that part, how does that affect Vue projects? That's actually interesting because our Vue language tools does rely on some deep integration with the language server and TypeScript APIs. So in the current state of the TS-Go implementation, those parts are much less well-defined. They haven't gotten to, especially the API parts yet. But that's also a good opportunity because we have a working relationship with the TS team. So they actually know Volar is an important use case in the ecosystem. So we want to make sure we collaborate with them and, actually some of the APIs that Volar uses and also like CLI plugins. It's not a well-defined API service in the current TSC, but there's an opportunity for us to collaborate with them to make it well-defined so that we can no longer, so that we no longer have to like wrap TSC with Vue TSC. Like if they expose proper plugin APIs from the CLI, then we can just use TSC, and it would also be able to do type check Vue components. That's the ideal outcome, yeah.
Even better.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a stat of like 17% of developers of the survey pointed out that they are not entirely sure what libraries they should use for example, for forms or animations or UI components because there are so many of them. Mm-hmm. So which one would you recommend? Like form, animation, and UI?
Let's start over there. Daniel, if you want to.
I think the fact that there are lots of options here is a really good thing. So there are lots of good options. And the choice is not which one is the best, which one is the best in your use case. So there are some, so check. So for example, FormKit has a fantastic nested structure where you can just inject like a FormKit at any level and it all gets sort of wrapped up into a schema. That's really good for when you have non-definitive ways where your form elements are going to be combined, for example. It's a great feature that's, I think, pretty unique to FormKit. But that might not be your need. So check out the different features that they have. Know that whichever one you pick, it's probably not going to be a bad choice. The same with UI libraries. Again, you can really, there's a lot of reasons you would pick one versus another, and no one can tell you which UI library to use. It depends what look and feel you want, how you want to customize it, whether you want to use Tailwind CSS or not. So I'm totally noping out of the question. I tend myself to, for my small projects that I build, I tend to not use a UI library. I tend to use classes directly and as much as possible implement accessibility myself so that I don't forget how to do it. But UI libraries are also a good choice for that. I would probably use the new Motion library, and I would probably manage form state myself. That's what I would do in my use case. But that's probably not what I would do if I were building a big app. So you choose.
Well, I don't have personal preferences in terms of form libraries because I haven't been writing forms for a very long time. UI components, I think a recent trend is the focus on like Daniel said, do you want to customize the look of the components? So if you're just looking for something that's ready to go out of the box, I think there are a lot of these options, like Quasar Vuetify still works pretty well, and then there's Prime View, Nux UI. But if you want to go a level down and for more customizability, then something, I think Nux UI 3 is built on
Reka UI.
Reka, yeah. Originally it's called
Radix. No?
Radix View, renamed to Reka UI. I think that's the one I would recommend looking into. And then obviously Vue Motion, which is the new implementation based on the original Framer Motion library. I think that is the one you should pay attention to. But again, I personally haven't written a lot of production code with this library, so take my recommendation with a grain of salt. Check it out for yourselves. Yeah.
I'm really also partial to FormKit myself, but if you're using a UI library that has form solution built into it, I would, prefer that. Justin and the rest of the FormKit team have a lot of other really nice libraries as well. So for really simple animations, really quickly, throw a V auto animate directive on there and everything just slides around perfectly. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think all the FormKit libraries that are shipped, also drag and drop and tempo, are really cool. I think we heard a lot about animation, about UI libraries, a bit big, it depends on your use case. For also form state, yeah, handle it yourself unless you can't anymore. If you want to pre-populate forms that are nested depending on other forms, if you work in huge, I don't know, logistics stuff, or surveys, it might be a bit tricky, so that library helps. A bit like with state management, you feel when you need one. But when it comes to UI, I think one more thing that's a bit underrated right now is Inspire UI. It's one of my favorite libraries, mainly because you can take the components and it's not like you have to install anything. You can copy paste them. There's Tailwind support, 3 and 4 are coming soon, or even there in a branch. So the idea is you own the component. It's more based on design choices, style, animation. So it's not oh, here's your whole application in the same material design or whatever. But it can could be really nice for landing pages. So even if you say I use, let's say, Prime View or Nux UI, and I want to add a few well-looking components here and there, or customize them, it's very easy. Just copy them. So I think that's also a really nice pick.
Does Bootstrap count? Otherwise, I do not know.
I totally agree with what Alex was saying, by the way, about building up until you need something. Build your own form integration until you realize why it doesn't work and why you really need a form solution. Build your own UI components until you realize why you desperately need a UI library. Because then you'll, one, be better positioned to pick because you know the pain points. And also your you're not, because sometimes people get into the point where they only understand the UI library that they're using, and they don't, and they're too far away from the underlying thing that they're trying to do. There's a lot of things where you don't need any animation library. You can do it yourself. Anyway, so I think yes.
Yeah, in other words, if you feel like you don't know which to choose, it means you don't really understand your needs or constraints. And the best way to figure that out is to try to build it yourself and see where you get stuck. Now you have a much better understanding of what your real problems are. And then you have a much clearer criteria to pick the solution that fits your needs. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we finish our discussion panel, I got a note that the QR code was shown for too short amount of time. So if anyone else needs to scan it to see the report in the virtual form, we'll give it a few seconds. Any jokes?
Mark, you need a dad joke.
OK, I think that will be enough. So can we get a round of applause for our amazing Vue speakers?